in some marriages, especially when they're new and you're excited, you kind of get wrapped up in the marriage itself, and sometimes your own personal relationship with God may kind of take the back burner. So what would you say could help with that?
So that your relationship with your husband doesn't take precedence over your relationship with God.
Right.
Ooh, that's a good question. That is so vitally important. This is what I ended up having to do, because of course doing waking hours, and this is important too. So I'm glad you asked that question, because sometimes I think in Christian marriages, and sometimes I think there's an aspect of where people can get too spiritual. If that makes sense. Like, there's such thing as too spiritual. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Right? Because there always needs to be balance to something. You know, and then people always say that, well, you know, God's first, and God is first. So don't get me wrong when I say this. God is first. But at the same time, God expects us to be one with our husband. How can we be one with our husband when, you know, every time you turn around, you know, our husband wants to spend time with us and we read our Bible? Come on now. Let's just keep it real.
Yeah.
You know, he looking for that intimate time, and we talking about Hodobasata. You know.
That part.
You know. So what I needed to do, and what I had to do, okay, he's asleep. So I'm going to get up early while he's asleep.
Yeah.
And I'm going to spend time with God when I don't have to be concerned with making sure that I'm staying in tune to my husband. Right? So y'all know that's how I developed the 4 o'clock habit.
Goodness.
And to this day.
I remember that.
Y'all
I still don't know how you do it.
Y'all probably see text messages from me sometimes at wee hours in the morning.
Yes. And I wake up like, why is
at
she
this
up
point,
tonight?
not surprised. I already know she's up.
But you know, not that I expect y'all to answer back that time in the morning, but I'm thinking about it. Let me send this on.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons. That was another reason why I started developing that time at 4. But one of the main reasons why I started developing that 4 o'clock prayer time is because he's gonna be asleep to the world. And it's like in a zone. I don't worry about him being up, worrying about nothing else but his sleep time. Right? So get up. That's my quality time with God. I'm gonna read my word. I'm gonna pray. I'm gonna worship. I'm gonna spend time with the Father. That's how that got started. Right? So now, the rest of the day is me, him, y'all.
Yeah.
Right? Because when kids came into the picture, now I had to work that into the equation as well and make sure that I'm still being a part of your lives.
Yeah.
Right? Now I know 4 o'clock in the morning is not for everybody.
Ooh, that's rough. And I'm not a morning person. Still working on it, not gonna lie.
But, you know, you have to balance it out and figure out a time. You know, maybe there's a time where, and I'll just throw this out here because I don't know, but maybe there's a time where your soon-to-be husband and your husband, they have their time where maybe they're watching their favorite show that you don't necessarily watch, or a basketball game that you ain't really into. Not that you don't like basketball, but you get what I'm saying. Let that be your time.
Yeah.
You know, when you know that's not a time when he's necessarily going to be looking for you to be with him.
Right.
You know, just whatever is going to work out best for you and your schedules. You'll learn what that is, and you'll be able to figure out what that time is that makes sense for you guys. So I'm sure you've already figured that out. But that's basically, you have to find a fine balance and kind of stick with that. Doing too much.
Both sides. It's like you have the side that are kind of, like you mentioned, too spiritual, and then the side that, I'm not going to say spiritual enough because I don't know people's relationship with God. But you know, finding that balance I think is important. So
where the husband doesn't become your God.
Right.
But where you're not literally like, okay, only God. I don't see anybody else, and your husband is in the background like, what about me?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So definitely the balance.
Yeah, definitely so. One last thing, I'm gonna mention since we're talking about balance, because this is something I've heard before. I've heard many men mention this, and it's not that we do it intentionally, women, but you know, we become motherly. So when we have children, our focus and our attention is on our child, right? And so we can't forget that we still have husbands, right? Because it's easy for us to put our priorities on our children. I did it. Probably the dog named Blue did it. You know, it's just normal because it's innate for us as mothers. We're, especially a brand new mother, when you have that first child, you know, you're just all into the baby, right? And so it's important that we remember that they're still needing our attention and love as well. You know, and that the children don't become first and foremost, and that the husband gets left in the back burner.
Even with kids coming into a marriage, I know that can shake things up and may force you to have to reprioritize some things and all that. How do you still prioritize your marriage when kids do come into the picture?
Yeah, I had to learn that. You know, I didn't have that figured out right away because, again, I was new, I was young. I had you when I was 25 and then you when I was 30. So still young, still had to work through that. And I had a million hats that I was wearing too. So it wasn't just the parenting hat, the wife hat, I had the student hat on, the full-time employee hat, the ministry hat, had all these different million hats. I kind of feel like there was a grace that God gave me to learn how to manipulate through all of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's really just learning as you, I hate to say learning as you go, but literally that was me. I had to learn as I went along to find that unique balance. It's husband time, when it's, child time, when it's our family time. I don't know if you guys remember this, but we always had a family time. You remember that when you guys were growing up?
Friday nights. We would go up to Blockbuster.
We all pick a movie.
Yep.
Come back, eat pizza or whatever our dinner choice was, watch a movie together. Yep.
And we carried that on until Blockbuster was no more. And then I think, what did we do? We started doing dinners. We started going out on Fridays to eat at restaurants. And sometimes we would go to the movies together as well, I believe. So family time, have that structured time where it's all about the family, but then have that time where it's all about you and your spouse as well. Unfortunately, when they're young, when the babies and kids are young, your quality time with your husband's gonna be at night when they're asleep. Because when them kids are up and moving around, I mean, it just goes without saying. The quality time is just probably not going to be there, because you have to be then. If the child is real young, as they get older, then it becomes a little bit more easy to try to figure out and structure that. But it's going to be all about structure. Find that balance and structuring it out. And then here's another thing too, because I think I neglected to do this, but foresight and hindsight is everything, right? So hindsight, if I could go back and do things a little bit differently, probably communications, we were talking about communication earlier, would have been a good thing, where if I would have communicated and said, look, a lot going on, we have children now, let's determine a good time for us, where it's just us, outside of just nighttime, even if that's a babysitter or whoever, somebody you can trust, having those dates. One thing that your daddy and I don't know if you guys remember, but we used to have date nights, and we still do. We have carried that on Friday nights. It's been our thing since, God, we've been married 30 years. And we was having date nights before we had children. And we were doing it even when you guys were born. And so there would be times when very few people we would let watch you guys. But we had that one person, I won't mention her name, but that would watch out all the time. Right? And so with that being said, we would do that so that we could make sure we had our date nights and had our time together. So, but conversation, communication, just having that open dialogue and saying, look, are you feeling neglected? I wish I would have had time to, or would have thought to, I should say, have that conversation with your father. He was real good about everything, but that doesn't mean he didn't feel some kind of way. You know what I'm saying? So if I would have just thought to just say, look, I realize that we have children now. Are you feeling some kind of way? You feel neglected, and am I doing enough? And maybe just having that conversation, that one-on-one, just kind of seeing. Because I think sometimes when children come in the picture, that's where sometimes marriages start falling apart. To be honest with you, with some people I notice, because there's this, this thing where it's all about the kids. And people forget that now we still need to focus on us. We're important too. So I think that's what I would do.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good reminder too of our priorities. God, your husband, kids, instead of, because I feel like a lot of people will reverse that and put kids and then husband. So making sure you're, like you said, prioritizing the marriage and taking that time, finding that time when it's just y'all two, where you can continue to feed and nurture and grow that marriage, so that once the kids are grown and gone, y'all can keep going.
So you're not just looking like, okay, who are you? I don't know.
Right. Exactly.
In my house.
Exactly. That's the thing. If you notice, sometimes that's when divorce happens, is once the kids are grown and they're out of the house. Okay, we no longer have to stay in this thing because we don't have little kids anymore that we have to be concerned about how they're going to feel when mom and dad are no longer together. So now that they're grown and they're on their own and they're in their own marriages or whatever they're doing, we can go on about our business. So, that's what you want to try to avoid, the falling away that happens sometimes in marriages because of that. So you can always try to keep him first and prioritize him. And when we say make God first, that doesn't mean that we ignore our spouses. So I think that's important. I got to keep throwing that out there because, I think there's not a balance sometimes with people. When we say God first, we think that means we ignore everybody else. And then when I'm finished spending my time with God, then I'm coming to you. So, we got to understand what that means, God first. That means we're not going to allow anybody to interfere with our relationship with God. You know, but at the same time, we still have other relationships that have to be nurtured as well.
Yeah.
So that's important to remember.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this has been some good talk.
Yeah.
I love talking with my babies. Y'all always gonna be my sweeties. So let's keep doing this.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.